And joining us in studio, Thabo Modau from the South African National Civic Organization as the Regional Secretary and is also a mining representative. Adil Nchabileng is Transform RSA President. And Ben Sitluano, I beg your pardon, SA National Mining Council as their President. Joseph Mutsitesi is a NUMA Deputy President on the phone line. Good evening to you, gentlemen, and thanks so much for joining us. Adil, really a case of the two interdicts, because previously it was more in favor of the respondents, the litigants, the Bank of Baroda, the applicants, Oak Bay, this time being vindicated, albeit for about 15 days.
It's a good judgment. Judge Makgoka applied himself, and I think he was very, very brave to make this call. One, particularly on the basis that the courts are now weighing the weight of probabilities. If you actually exclude the Oak Bay's companies from actually having financial independence and transaction ability, you are actually hamstringing a company that needs to have access, particularly the employees within the company. Those are the mostly hard affected people. And in this case, we are seeing a clear case that the banks in South Africa have no interest to particularly serve the customers that they are given a license in order to provide these particular services. And as such, they are putting in individual entities as well as corporate entities into a precarious situation. This decision was precipitated by one, Standard Bank, FNB, and then it was ABSA, and then followed by Nedbank, who actually shut down the business accounts of Oak Bay. Then followed now by the Bank of Baroda's pressure, which they placed upon the Bank of Baroda to say that excommunicate and shut down the accounts of this particular Oak Bay company. And doing that, what the viewers don't know particularly is the monies that were actually shut down within the other four banks, that monies has not been released as yet, which means it was an illegal shutdown. These banks have taken upon themselves cash as well as income that belongs to a particular company, which is Oak Bay here, and they've retained it for themselves. And as such, it's a criminal offense with regards to having not even obtained a proper High Court permit and order to do so. So a clear message must be sent to the banking institution. They are becoming a cartel of their own, and they are perpetuating criminal activities by unconstitutionally removing as well as closing down people's accounts. Oak Bay is not the only company. We have our own companies. We have other companies that we know that have been shut down in the past and that are still shut down. We have individuals in South Africa whose bank accounts have been shut down. Their monies have been frozen illegally. So this is a trend that is coming up, and we are seeing it. So the judgment today by Judge Makgoka was a very good judgment. 15 days for an application by Oak Bay to make sure that they continue enjoying financial services will be an important step to make sure that we have a situation where no other company is actually discriminated in the future.
Yeah, and I mean, if you look at the significance of this particular interdict, considering how far the Oak Bay or Gupta-owned family businesses have come, in that chorus, as you were saying, systematically closing accounts one after the other. I think I just joined the company coincidentally when all of this mayhem was happening around the companies. The interesting part that this particular judge made was not in the interest of the commercial banks' benefit. It was more about the employees. What do you make of this distinction, Thabo?
Cindy, look, this is a good judgment. Judge Makgoka must be commended. We feel vindicated as communities and workers who marched to these banks recently. You see, we have been saying here, how do you compare the right of a bank to close down accounts against the loss of 7,500 jobs? And this judgment has actually gone into that space exactly, to say, you can then say, look, let's start here, Cindy. Oak Bay has a constitutional right to have their bank accounts open. For you to be able to transact in this country, you need to have a bank account. So this decision has, one, set a foundation for Oak Bay to defend their constitutional right. But secondly, it has also set a foundation to defend the rights of the workers to receive their salaries. But moving beyond that, we've been always making reference to the community of Henrina and the communities that are benefiting from Oak Bay and other listed companies in terms of the SLP commitment. So for us, it's a huge achievement, Cindy. It has set a foundation for Oak Bay to be able to defend so that we keep these accounts open. The decision to shut down the accounts, Cindy, it is politically motivated where we are sitting.
Okay, so just let's ventilate that, because there is public outcry. You just have to pick up any headline or newspaper that will give you the connect the dots narrative of how the Guptas have instrumentally, systematically eroded the estate coffers, appointed ministers, etc., and the banks arguing that this is material reputational damage that they've suffered. Except for the Bank of Baroda, they weren't able to prove, in fact none of them, whether they've lost clients in the process or whether, how do you quantify the reputational damage to the point where you'd have to close the account?
Let me just come in there, Cindy. Is Oakbay the only company that has been alleged to have political connections? If you go to provinces, let's go to the Western Cape. Recently, I can't recall the headlines, I read in an article that the son of the premier of the Western Cape had benefited fraudulently somewhere in one company.
Helen Zille.
And tell me that the son of Helen Zille's company, is that company's accounts closed? I'm saying those accounts are not closed. If you read the headlines today, they are not saying Oakbay as a company. They are saying Gupta. So there is a particular agenda to Guptarize everything. Therefore, I'm saying this is a political agenda because they are not the only company that has been alleged. And there is no court of law, Cindy, where they have been found to be corrupt. You know? Okay,
let's speak to Ben Sutluano. Thanks so much for your patience. He's with the South African National Mining Council as the president. Sutluano, thanks. Your view, I mean, this could play out either way. 15 days from now, we could be talking something completely different based on what the courts will decide. But nonetheless, it will be an opportunity to make a full application and disclose the issue around the Financial Intelligence Center report also being questioned as to why was it sort of thrown in the fray as if to add a little bit of spice to the whole matter. What do you make out of this, the interdict being granted today?
Good evening, Cindy, and your listeners at home, and your panelists today. We like to congratulate the judge about the judgment that is being given today. We really appreciate the judgment in a sense that it really addressed the needs of the poorest of the poor people. Remember.
All right, we're going to have to try. Yes.
And yes, it was so harsh in a sense that it has a politically motivated in a sense that the workers are the most people who are going to suffer the consequences because I will tell you why. In every sector, when there is a complaint of this magnitude goes to the court of law, they mostly listening to the complainant and failing to listen to the second party that is participating in that court case because their statements are mostly undermined because if you look at this matter from the first point, as I have indicated last time, that judgment was like a crime against humanity because we've got people who are basically dependent on those family members gradually so. And if those accounts happen to be closed, and that was our biggest worry. And finally, what I'm going to submit is that that 15 days, it will give them more time to go and prepare themselves and then to come with a better submission going forward.
Sutluano, just please stay on the line. I just want to, for the interest of context and content, is the earlier judgment being denied for the fact that the balance of inconvenience was the judge arguing that the banks would suffer reputational damage, number one, and they wanted to uphold the integrity of the financial system. And the other party, meaning Oakbay in this case, will undermine or is trying to subvert the whole matter in its own benefit. Interestingly enough, today, in the other interdict, the judge actually saying that this dispute transcends the whole litigating party's commercial interests. It really has to do with what is the greater impact of having 7,600 families jobless?
The plight of the workers is the key center of this particular application. If it is true that we are told that indeed the banks were going to suffer irreparable harm and damage, let's ask the question, when have the banks ever suffered? It is almost 2 years that this particular banking battle has been going on. South African banks continue to enjoy the most obscene amount of profits. They have not been actually subjugated or subjected to any form of litigation by anybody except the issue regarding the Oak Bay matter. Many other accounts, if we were to be honest, the banks must start disclosing as to how many bank accounts have they closed of individuals as well as companies on the basis of this particular suspicion that there has been dubious accounts. Why are they doing that is because they are trying to hamstring. There's a trend in South Africa among the banking circles and cartel. If they want to shut you down in business, they go and sit amongst themselves as a banking institution and say that we are targeting, in this case, for instance, Oak Bay. What do we want to do to Oak Bay? Remember, the same owners of the banks are the same owners of big companies. They go there and say the only way to do it is to make sure that you cut their financial strength and ability to transact. And as they do that cutting of your financial strength and ability to transact, they make it impossible for you to, one, pay your creditors, to, one, run your businesses efficiently, to have facilities, access to facilities like loans, to have facilities to overdraft, to have facilities to ability to pay your workers and everything. In this case, we've seen it in the communities of Hendrina, as well as what Sanko was representing, that workers were worried about their payments of their salaries. Not only that, those salaries facilitate further other payments, which is to pay over their houses, their cars, their other valuable issues in their lives. So where is it that in this whole scenario are the banks suffering? The banks are lying in South Africa saying that they are going to suffer irreparable harm. Which irreparable harm when they only suffer when they lose the money? And in this case, they've not lost a cent. Instead, they've taken money from other people and actually placed it into their
but the incessant attack on Oak Bay, even if in the interim they're trying to shed their assets because of the public outcry and many other companies along the way severing ties with them, it's not possible to do so if you can't transact.
Cindy, the run was done by one person. Let me just clarify this. Maria Ramos and a group of various bankers sat down and made a decision to say that we are going to target one company, and in this case they said Oak Bay Company, because what? It presented a big problem and a challenge for them in the economy and the market domination that they've been enjoying as white monopoly capitalists. So what they said is, in order to frustrate them, is to make sure that we cut down their banking as well as financial security, so that in the interim their whole businesses crumbles to the bottom.
Yeah, we're going to have to send a right of reply on that particular one, Adil. Only you can make a claim like that and get away with it. We just want to reiterate, it's not necessarily the view of this channel or the show. Let's just come back to in 15 days' time, not to preempt. We're not sure how the courts will rule, but it is an interesting twist or observation that the court has made. I just want to get a voice from Joseph Montisetsi. He is the National Union of Mine Workers Deputy President. Raymond Montisetsi, thanks so much for your time. Just your initial reaction to the interdict today. Hello, Joseph, can you hear me? All right, we'll get back to him.
Yeah, Cindy, just on that, you see, the issue of this cartel of dominant white males in the economy, it's there, whether we want to run away from it. The only time that the Gupta family began to face real problems, it's when they came into the media space, they went to the mining space. I would not want to elaborate further on that. But let's argue here. You are saying, I am selling already. I am selling here, and probably because you have suffered already a reputational damage as well, you might be selling at far lesser than what you acquired these assets for. Now, should these accounts be closed within 15 days, how do you sell a mine? Let's say the mine costs R1 billion. How do you sell? Will that money be carried in vans? And how? Now, the decision by the banks, in this instance, where is the constitutional right then? You see, the approach here, we should be brought into the understanding that the intention here is to shut down these accounts, and when you have shut down, after 5 years you are saying, no, you have not been able to comply with your mining rights and whatnot, then you grab these mines away, because I think that's what is happening here. The intention is to grab these mines away from the family in this instance. Therefore, you see that there is a political agenda in this instance. How do they sell?
And I think that is the big question, that even if you reluctantly so under duress would have to shed your assets, you can't do so without a transacting facility. Joseph Muntisetse is back with us. Good evening to you. Just your initial reaction to the interdict today. Hi, Joseph.
Hello, ma'am.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you repeat?
Yes. Yeah, just your reaction. We've seen two judges giving a different verdict. Initially, the one saying that the Oak Bay group of companies is trying to subvert the law, and the financial institutions are trying to uphold the integrity of the financial sector. But today we saw a different judgment.
Well, thank you very much for the information. I have never heard about the judgment because I'm just from the meeting now. But if the judgment says that the account will be open so that our workers will receive their monthly salaries, we welcome that judgment, because we have written letters to the banks to ask them that this thing is not a punishment only to the Guptas. It's a punishment to our members who don't receive salaries and their families are suffering. So those people that they are trying to punish, they are living a luxury life because they have connections everywhere internationally. So the people that are suffering is our members. So if the judgment says that the account will be open and our members will be receiving their salaries, we welcome that judgment.
Raymond said, and just going forward, as you were saying, that there is still another process that is going to play out. Interestingly enough, in an earlier discussion, we were talking about the redressing the issues of the past and also holding those accountable that benefited from a structural system that perpetuated segregation, black exclusion, etc. We haven't seen, give me an example of who else had the wrath of not only the banking sector, the public outcry, etc., more than what the Oak Bay group of companies, or Gupta-linked companies, has had.
Today we are seeing a development of something very dangerous. Let me just decipher one concept. The concept Gupta is not a concept which was just born out of ignorance. It was created specifically to punish anyone who is one Indian and businessman, because they don't just say the Guptas, they say the Indian Gupta family. So today when you have an Indian person going into a project with either supplying services to the state or private sector, you know what they say to you as the first thing? Go away because you're a Gupta. They don't judge anything, whether you're a good businessman, you have done ethically, you have done very well. They just now tarnish everybody on the basis that they happen to be Indian, and as such they are a Gupta identity and identified people. We have the same challenge right now. As we move around, everybody else looks at us and says, you're a Gupta stooge. How do we become stooges of a family who we don't even have interactions with? We come here and we engage and we debate issues and we talk on fundamental facts. So there is a very concerning development in South Africa. If whatever you're saying that is right and you're challenging the status quo, the very first thing that they do to shut you down out of a very silly narrative is they call you a Gupta and they Guptarize everything, whatever you say, so that we
have
can
you been
be
to the
shut
Shebeen?
down.
I haven't been to the Shebeen.
I don't know.
I haven't even been to the compound.
So it's one of those issues.
Yeah.
Maybe in line with that, the banks seems to have too much power. Not seems, they have too much power in this country. And South Africa is a developmental state, and we are in a state where government plays an interventionist role in the economy. Now, in this instance, do we not need a commission of inquiry on the attitude and the conduct of banks? I think the submission that must be made by everybody is that we need that, so that the power, because these banks, they seem to be enjoying too much power, you know. And I think if you are to put that commission, then you can then make a recommendation, because if the state will be, will not be able to intervene when somebody's accounts are closed, and the state cannot be taken into account in terms of the reasons. The only time we get to learn when Praveen, who owns shares in the very same banks, goes to court. He's the only one who's able to access that information, and whether he accesses it correctly or incorrectly, it is something else. And I think in line with what Ntshabileng is saying, today it is a sin to challenge the status quo. People who are founders of the National Union of Mine Workers were mum when 7,500 people were about to lose jobs. COSATU is mum the SACP is MAM, and other political parties in this instance. Because in this country, like that judge, you will hear that judge, he has been to the shipping. He will be labeled and given names that this judge is captured. Today, you can no longer stand and say in this country where white males dominate the economy, there is white monopoly capital. When you say there is white monopoly capital in this country, you are a Gupta stooge. When you report about NN7 in this country, you say Gupta Media. When you report about Optimum, you say Gupta Mine. But when you report about Marikana and Lonmin, you don't say a Cyril Mine, you say Lonmin. When you report about Glencoe, you don't say a Cyril Mine, you say Glencoe. Now, this is where people must see that there is a political agenda.
Well, it does sound, though, when you say Gupta-linked company. You know, you sort of...
Yeah, because they know it's a created narrative to undermine everything that is progressive and that is going to challenge. For radical economic transformation to happen, we need more companies that are going to challenge the status quo. The Gupta Oak Bay company was one of the first that actually broke the norm. And as a result, they got punished. That is the fact.
All right, Adil, we're going to have to leave it there. Gentlemen, as always, lovely having you. Adil Ntshabeleng is Transform RSA President. And in studio, we had Thabo Motau, SANCO, South African National Civic Organization, Regional Secretary and Mining Representative, and Mr. Ben Sutlwano, SA National Mining Council President, and Joseph Montisetsi, NOMA Deputy President on the phone line. We'll take a quick break and do stay tuned for ANC Decides just after this.